You thought it was nothing, just a small gesture, maybe too small to mean anything. He adjusted his shirt when you walked in. He touched your arm but pulled away a second later. He glanced at you when he thought you weren't looking. It happened, quickly, without words, and yet something inside you paused. You felt it in your chest. It wasn't logic, it wasn't analysis, it was intuition. Something in you whispered, "This matters." That is the language of the unconscious. It doesn't shout, it doesn't explain itself, but it speaks, through muscles, through eyes, through a shift in posture or a softening of the voice. The human body is constantly revealing what the mind tries to hide, and Carl Jung believed that this is where the truth always lives. We are trained to listen to words, we hang on sentences, we wait for verbal reassurance, but the truth of how someone feels is rarely found in what they say, it's found in what they don't control. The unconscious doesn't wait for permission to reveal itself. When someone tries to hide what they feel, their body often speaks louder than their intentions. In romantic dynamics, especially when feelings are complicated, this can be both heartbreaking and powerful. A man might tell you he doesn't want anything serious. He might say he's fine, that he's just tired, that you're imagining things. But then comes a moment, one moment, a gesture that gives him away. He leans closer when you talk. He fixes something near you, unnecessarily. He lowers his voice when you express pain. It's not dramatic, it's not planned, but it's real. And it comes from the part of him that he doesn't fully know. The most honest part of a person is the one they cannot script. And that part often shows up through gesture, through action, through the body moving faster than the brain can control. You may not even realize why you felt something shift until much later. But your heart caught it, because the heart has always known what the eyes cannot see. This is why one simple gesture can reveal more than 1,000 words. He doesn't even realize what he's done, but you do. And once you see it, once you feel it, you cannot unsee it. His mask begins to crack, and in that crack, you glimpse the truth. He may try to regain control. He may pull away again. He may laugh it off, or act colder later to overcorrect what just slipped through. But the truth already passed between you, silently, irreversibly. That one unconscious gesture was his confession. Maybe he touched you softly when he thought no one was watching. Maybe he adjusted his shirt, then looked down as if caught. Maybe he hesitated before speaking, and in that pause, everything in you understood. What words could not carry. What makes this even more powerful is that many men do not know how to process emotion through language. They were never taught how. They learned that strength means control, that vulnerability is weakness, that emotions are best kept private, locked away, translated into action, or hidden behind performance. So when real emotion stirs inside him, it frightens him. He resists it. He denies it. But the body can only hold so much. And when he sees you, when you activate something tender in him, the body reacts. Before he can silence it, before he can retreat behind sarcasm or indifference, something honest escapes. A glance, a pause, a touch, a breath. That's the gesture that reveals everything. Sometimes we miss it. We're too busy trying to decode words. We look for clarity in what's spoken, when the clarity already happened in that moment we brushed off. But if you pay attention, your body will know. You will feel the shift, not with your thoughts, but with your entire being. You're not crazy for noticing. You're not imagining it. You're not reading too much into things. You're simply aware of the nonverbal language of the heart, aware of the emotional reality that lives underneath all of his control, aware that truth doesn't always come with a speech. Sometimes it comes in a blink. Carl Jung believed that what we repress doesn't go away. It finds its way to the surface through other doors. The hands, the eyes, the timing of a smile, the way someone stands when they are near you. These are not accidents. These are maps to the internal world of the soul. A man who truly feels something, but hasn't made peace with it, will often show it in the most delicate ways. He may not write you poems or declare his feelings, but he may sit closer to you than necessary. He may stay silent when you speak, not out of boredom, but out of reverence. He may fumble, lose his words, laugh nervously. His body speaks even when his mouth does not. When you see that, when you notice that one gesture, you're not catching a mistake, you're witnessing truth. The kind of truth that only surfaces when the walls fall for a second. And it's in those seconds that everything changes. This is also why some people become frightened of deep connection. because in those unguarded gestures, they feel exposed, seen, touched, in a place they've kept hidden, and their response may be to pull back, to act cold, to create distance, not because they don't care, but because caring feels dangerous. They've been taught that emotions are unsafe, that tenderness equals weakness, that to feel too much is to lose control, so but again, the body doesn't lie. The man who is emotionally invested may not send you flowers or make promises, but he will soften when you cry. He will glance at you when you look away. He will inhale deeper when you walk past. These are the signs, and one gesture is enough to confirm what he doesn't yet know how to admit. Trust what you see. Trust what you feel. Trust the shift in energy that happens in the space between words. You've been trained to doubt your intuition. Wait for verbal confirmation, but you don't need it. The gesture already said everything. The truth of someone's feelings is rarely loud. It shows up in the quiet moments. The hesitation, the change in breath, the body leaning in when the mind says, stay composed. And once you recognize this, you begin to see the world differently. You begin to understand that love isn't always loud, and connection isn't always explained. Sometimes, it is simply revealed, and it only takes one gesture. Sometimes, healing doesn't begin with words, it begins with awareness. If you're beginning to notice the unconscious signs, and you're ready to understand yourself more deeply, I invite you to explore the Jung Method. The link is pinned in the first comment. Now, let's continue. It always starts subtly. He thinks he's managing his emotions well. He believes he's in control. But the moment you walk into the room, something shifts. He becomes more aware of himself. He adjusts his shirt, rubs the back of his neck, or suddenly grows quiet in a way that has nothing to do with words and everything to do with presence. He may pretend not to notice you, but his body betrays him. His chest rises slightly, his pupils dilate, his stance changes. These microsignals, invisible to the untrained eye, become clear once you've tuned into the energy behind the gesture. There is something primal in the way men express what they cannot admit. When words are unavailable or emotionally unsafe, the unconscious takes over. And most of the time, that unconscious uses the body as a messenger. He may not tell you he's drawn to you. He may not say he's afraid of how deep this connection feels, but his behavior, however small, speaks louder than he ever could. This is where Jung's teachings become especially relevant. He believed that what we refuse to face in ourselves will emerge anyway, often in forms we don't understand. That includes feelings, especially in love, especially in men who are never allowed to explore emotion freely. So when he begins to care, he doesn't know what to do with it. He doesn't know how to contain it. So it leaks out through a gesture. That's why a man can stand before you and say one thing, while his hand, his eyes, or his posture says something else entirely, because what's happening beneath the surface is always more honest. When a man feels emotionally safe, his gestures become aligned with his words. But when he's conflicted, they split. The words try to control, the body tries to release, and that's the fracture you feel. This fracture is not manipulation, it's confusion. It's the natural reaction of someone who's beginning to feel something that doesn't fit into the box he was raised with. He wants to protect himself. He wants to maintain strength. But at the same time, something inside him wants to surrender. That inner war is what you're witnessing when his gesture reveals the truth. It's easy to ignore it. It's easy to rationalize it away. But part of you already knows. That moment he lingered a bit too long. That pause before he let go of your hand. That glance he gave you when you weren't supposed to see it. They weren't accidents. They were expressions of something deeper. Something he isn't ready to articulate. Sometimes, these moments become more confusing when followed by withdrawal. He may give you a gesture that feels warm, present, sincere, but then he becomes cold, distant, blunt. This contradiction is painful, but it also confirms the emotional conflict within him. He doesn't reject you because the feelings weren't real. He pulls back because the feelings were too real. He may have spent his whole life protecting himself from exactly that kind of vulnerability. And suddenly, here it is, right in front of him. And it showed up not through a dramatic confession, but through one simple, unconscious gesture. This is why you must trust what you felt in that moment. You weren't imagining it. You were reading the truth before it had time to hide. Your emotional system is wiser than you think. It has felt before it ever learned language. It has loved before it ever asked for proof. Your intuition is a form of intelligence. And when you felt his hand linger, or his eyes soften, or his breath catch, you were witnessing his truth. Not the version of him that is practiced or filtered, but the version of him that still lives beneath all the layers he built for survival. This kind of awareness can be painful, because it often comes with the realization that he may never fully express what you felt. He may never say it aloud. He may continue to fight it. But the gift is that you saw it, you felt it, and in that feeling there was something sacred. You touched his truth, even if for a second, and that means something. That means everything. There is also something profoundly human about the way we try to protect ourselves from what we long for. He longs to feel safe enough to express, but the gesture shows up before the safety does. The body speaks before the mind allows it. This is where so much conflict begins, but also where healing can begin too, because when we acknowledge these gestures, not as mistakes, but as signs of truth, we begin to soften. We begin to hold space for a more authentic connection, one that doesn't rely solely on what is said, but also on what is felt. You can learn a lot about someone by how they act when they're not performing. In those in-between moments, the ones where he isn't thinking, the ones where his body moves on its own, that's when you know what lives in his heart, not what he's ready to say, but what's already there. This is not just about romantic gestures. This is about the unconscious reaching for closeness, for safety, for resonance. It's about a man who, despite everything he's been taught, still leans toward what feels real. Sometimes he fights it. Sometimes he's scared. But the gesture doesn't lie. It cannot, because the unconscious doesn't need permission to speak. It only needs a moment of openness. And in that moment, everything is visible. You might wonder what to do with this. What to do when you've seen the truth, but it's not being spoken. When you've felt the connection, but it's being denied. The answer isn't always to confront or to fix. Sometimes it's simply to honor what you saw, to trust what you felt, to know that you are not crazy. That moment mattered. Not every truth needs to become a conversation. Some truths are seeds. They are planted quietly and grow in silence. Over time, they become too real to deny. And perhaps, one day, he'll be ready to speak the words that his body already confessed. Until then, let yourself rest in the power of recognition. You saw it. You witnessed something real. And that knowing, that clarity, is something no distance, no silence, no denial can erase. You don't need to chase it. You don't need to force anything. The gesture already gave you the answer. You already received what you came for. And now, your power is in trusting yourself enough to believe it. Because when a man's body reveals what his mind can't yet admit, it's not your job to make him speak. It's your job to listen to what you already heard with your heart. This is where feminine power lives, not in begging for words, but in recognizing what's already been said, without sound, what's already been offered, without intention, and what's already been felt, without agreement. The moment he made that gesture, everything changed. Maybe not in him, not yet, but in you, because you could see, you could feel, and from now on you'll never unsee it. That is the gift, the clarity, the truth, not because he said it, but because you were present enough to notice when his soul spoke. And maybe that's all you ever needed.